Now, what are your thoughts on people saying get a residential, unit and have a separate dwelling in the basement, rent that out potentially, where you could have, had some help with the actual mortgage?
That is a great potential option for someone.
It wasn't for you.
It wasn't an option that I thought that I realistically had.
Why? Because the properties were too much in price?
Because we were already looking at those properties like
Got
that.
it.
Like even in Kitchener, we were looking at, buying the upstairs, renting out the basement.
Right.
And even then it would be at the top of the budget of what I could afford. But for someone that, maybe has a little bit more down, like at the time I didn't have that much down.
And then what does it take to get, in terms of down? You've had this 9 to 5 for the X amount of years. You've saved. Obviously, you've developed saving habits.
Yeah. It took time.
I'm sure it did.
The one thing of going from like the service industry where you get cash in hand, and being young, to then building the right proper saving and spending habits, bro. It took me a long time to break that habit.
I'm sure.
I'm now pretty good, but honestly.
So what was that thing that clicked? I got to put some of this away.
It was.
How much did you start with?
With REC?
$250 a week, $250 bi-weekly.
Oh, for savings?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's
what was your strategy?
Here was how I got out of my problem. Okay, and I'm still kind of getting out of my problem.
No, we're all getting out of the problem.
So this is what
we're all working on it. Okay.
So going from the service industry with cash in hand to then taking a pay cut and doing like an admin role was a big shock for me, and I probably should have adjusted my spending earlier, but I didn't. I was still going out. I was still being a 24-year-old, bro, 25-year-old, eating out all the time, going out to clubs, like just having fun, right? Which you should, right? All 20-year-olds don't just stay home all day. Okay, go have fun. Do it within your means though, so what happened was, probably when I was about 27, 28, a few things happened. One, I got audited from the CRA, and then they said I owe a little bit more money than I thought I was gonna have to owe.
Right.
Okay, so there was one there. Okay. The second thing was that I looked at my credit card bill, and it started racking up. And then I had my wedding coming up, and all of those things together, I sat down with my fiance, but wife now, and we're just like, this doesn't make sense. We can't keep this debt, that's bad debt, pooling. What do we do? So the first thing that we had to do is we had to create a savings and budgeting plan. One, I had to cut expenses in the way.
All the nonsense.
Yeah, all the nonsense, the subscriptions, even now, I don't have a streaming subscription. The only thing I have is a ChatGPT subscription. That's what I have.
No Netflix.
None of that.
No Hulu.
No.
Wifey's not watching Kardashians.
We have an Android box.
There you go.
We found an alternative way to do it. And then after we trimmed our monthly expenses as much as we could, we then wanted to tackle the debt first.
Right.
In my mind, saving a lot of money with this debt when we're paying, we had lines of credit and stuff, but it was still it was still 11 to 14% interest depending on the account, right? It was still not 19%, 21%, but it was still
a lot of money, man.
And then we focused on that first, chipping that away. And it took time, man. It took time to chip that away. And after that, we started then to save.
How did it feel to pay off the credit cards?
How
did it feel?
Okay, you want to know the reality? Now talk about life? Okay, it felt amazing.
Oh my God.
Until you go back into your old habits.
And touch it again.
Yeah. And so now we're good. Started this year, we did it again.
Yeah.
And, last year. And it feels really good because now every extra dollar you can now play with because you've already trimmed your expenses. Yeah. What I would recommend now, being in the problem of debt, getting out of that problem, being in that problem again, and then now getting out of it, and for a little bit now, I would say do not change how you're managing your living expenses when you were trying to pay down your debt, when you're out of debt. Try to keep it tight still for a bit. And then what I would recommend doing is probably saving like at least 10,000 as
a
like
year.
like saving like 10,000 liquid as like a savings fund, little by little.
Yeah.
If it takes you time, it takes you time. And then once you get the 10,000 saved up, everything else now put it into these different accounts to at least have it worked for you.
Mm-hmm.
And being worked means that you can invest, like obviously in real estate,
Yeah.
but there's other passive styles of investments as well that are in real estate and not in real estate, like investing into like a stock or an index fund, where at least your money's being worked for you while you can pool that money, and then you can use it to buy. You know,
we'll talk about, if we have time, we'll talk about those kind of options. But
so that's
high level. That's how
man.
You did it, right?
That's how I did it. I first eliminated my debt because it didn't make sense on having like a 14% per year interest charged on that. When like even if you invest into the stock market, like in a very average case, if you're like a conservative to medium risk investor, bro, you're only getting like max 14% return.
Right.
So that's a fucking wash.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's get this debt out of the way.
1,000%.
And then after that, save up a reserve fund of your living expenses. Try to do 2 to 3 months or 10,000, one or the other. And then once you have that, then try to then devote it to, you know, this chessboard that we have in building.
So you guys mastered this plan. You know, you got to a point where you can at least put some money away to make a decision. The decision was,
and then our decision was to go and buy that condo.
Right. And then you're a landlord, right? So you've had these conversations with landlords all the time about, you know, picking the perfect tenant and all the horror stories that go along with it, right?
Yeah, 100%.